Okay, let's unpack this. When we think about the end of a city, we usually imagine something. Well, something slow.
Hmm.
We picture decades of economic collapse, a steady migration out, maybe a gradual crumbling of infrastructure.
They fade away.
Exactly. Cities decline, they fade. But what happens when a city doesn't fade? What happens when an entire functioning metropolis is essentially just switched off?
And that is the central and I think deeply unsettling question in the source material we're looking at today.
Right.
This isn't a story of economic abandonment. It's not even that slow decay you see in some post-industrial areas. This was the immediate government-ordered cessation of a city's life.
One day it's normal.
Completely.
Yeah.
People were going about their routines, paying rent,
Yeah.
worrying about school pickups, navigating the local bus routes, and the very next day, the entire municipal structure, the very existence of that community was legally nullified.
So our mission today, then, is to step back from all the speculation that, tends to surround stories like this one.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to analyze the extremely compressed timeline of this closure and just methodically investigate the official record. And we're going to pay very close attention, not just to what was said, but to where the information is missing.
Right, where the reports are heavily redacted.
Or where the official statements just stop short of providing any real verifiable detail.
And what it leaves us with is this profound historical paradox. You have a place that was demonstrably normal. I mean, standard streets, thriving shops, established schools.
All the evidence of a living city.
All of it. And yet, it vanished. Or maybe we should say it was vanished without any public process. No local debate, no vote, no lengthy discussion. It was a functional community that was converted overnight into a closed perimeter.
That contrast, the mundane normalcy versus the sudden, almost catastrophic administrative decision, that has to be where we start. The sources all emphasize that before the order, this city was just busy.
Exactly. And we're not talking about some kind of secret military base or a clandestine research facility. The records show this was a diverse population.
Living typical modern lives.
People were clocking into plants, teaching classes, filing tax returns, making plans for the weekend. The documents show standard city council meetings, complaints about pothole repairs.
Yeah.
All the bureaucratic evidence of a fully functional community.
So there was absolutely no public indication of a disaster looming.
None whatsoever.
Which makes the transition to the decision itself so shocking. You mentioned it was a forced closure by order.
And what's fascinating here is the speed of the administrative action. A major municipal closure, especially one involving the permanent displacement of thousands of people, that normally involves consultation, maybe court challenges.
A year-long notification period, at least.
At least. This was immediate. It wasn't the chaotic flight you see after a natural disaster. This was a forced closure, systematically managed and executed by decree. Zero warning. And that meant, crucially, no time for residents to prepare.
I have to pause on that. Because if you contrast that speed with any other government action zoning, eminent domain, even closing a street for construction, the lack of process is almost incomprehensible.
It is.
No public debate, no opportunity to object. The sources are so clear on this. The order was issued one afternoon, and the city was effectively closed the very next day.
And the initial communication, according to the sources we have, was starkly brief. Residents got these notices telling them they had to leave, some immediately, others were given just a few days.
But the key point is it wasn't voluntary.
Not at all. The city was actively, and I'd say aggressively, emptied.
And that sudden evacuation leads us right into the next part of this mystery, which is the extreme vagueness of the edict itself. When the government finally issued public justifications, the reasons were defined almost entirely by their lack of clarity. We have a list of 3, and they're cited over and over in the official record. Safety concerns,
Okay.
infrastructure risks,
Again, very broad.
and the constant assurance that these were merely temporary measures.
Well, if we look at those claims, you see contradictions right away. If the risk was a clear threat, a dam about to burst or a bridge ready to collapse, a government would normally use that fear as a powerful justification.
Of course. They'd want public buy-in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, they maintained this studied silence, refusing to provide any specifics. That silence itself seems to contradict the severity of the stated risk. And if it really was temporary, why the immediate aggressive sealing of the area?
No clear timeline was ever provided. No detailed engineering or environmental explanation ever accompanied the order. The documents we reviewed suggest the priority was removal, not explanation.
And that priority was underscored by the enforcement mechanisms that appear, well, instantly. Armed checkpoints materialized at all the entry points.
Just like that.
Access was immediately restricted. Public transport just stopped running. Trains were diverted. Bus routes were terminated at the city limits. This wasn't a recommendation to shelter in place. The sources describe a highly coordinated operation to seal off and empty a major population center.
So if we shift to the immediate human impact of this, the sources provide some heartbreaking details. People packed what they could actually carry.
Suitcases, essential documents, pets.
And the evidence really suggests they believed the whole temporary measures line.
Oh, they absolutely did. They left their lives behind. The investigative reporting notes instances of residents leaving furniture untouched, family photos still on the walls.
Food in the refrigerator.
Perishable food in the refrigerators. They were operating under the profound misunderstanding that they would be returning in a matter of weeks.
But while they're carrying out what they think is a temporary evacuation, the entire mechanism of the city is being permanently dismantled around them.
This is where we see the concept of the systemic shutdown in full effect. It wasn't just a spontaneous flight. Shops closed overnight, often leaving stock behind. Schools shut midterm.
Imagine that, transferring thousands of student records.
Hospitals were forced to transfer every single patient. Even the invisible systems, utility workers given severance, property titles frozen in legal limbo, city contracts canceled en masse. It was a rapid surgical operation to erase the city's legal and functional existence.
The sources convey a very specific mood during all this. It was confusion, not panic.
Right. A growing sense that no one was being told the full story.
They knew the official explanation just didn't add up. It didn't account for the scale or the speed of it all.
There's one quote from a resident that I think captures it perfectly. They said, "If the risk was so bad, why didn't they tell us what it was? And if it wasn't that bad, why are we leaving everything behind?"
That's the inherent contradiction right there. And this is where the analysis gets really intriguing, because that immediate closure led directly to the next phase, the sealed record, the secrecy. Years later, the official government stance is rigid. The closure was necessary based on expert advice, and public safety was the priority.
But the sources show that this consistent messaging served as an administrative shield. The message was clear, but the necessary details, they never followed. This pattern of sustained information suppression is absolutely central to the mystery.
It wasn't just silence, it was an active policy of secrecy.
Yes.
You mentioned redacted reports. For our listeners, when we say the government sealed the data, what does a redacted report actually look like in this case? Is it just a few black lines?
No, the redactions were comprehensive. We're talking about massive blocks of text blacked out, entire paragraphs, sometimes full pages, removed from documents. It wasn't just hiding a name, it was erasing the entire technical justification for the order.
So any requests for supporting documents, engineering studies, environmental surveys were just delayed or rejected?
Routinely. And press briefings were carefully orchestrated to avoid specifics entirely. It created this deliberate, enduring wall of silence. The silence itself became the story.
Journalistic access was always extremely limited then.
And controlled. Reporters were always monitored, always escorted, and never allowed to stay for long. It ensured they could only capture surface-level observations, the empty streets, the abandoned squares, and prevented them from conducting any kind of real investigation.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a government prioritizing state secrecy over public transparency for decades, which raises the question of the physical state of the city now. What does a city look like when it's been artificially frozen in time?
The perspective you take matters greatly. From above, say from a satellite, the city looks intact. Roofs are sound, roads are undamaged, the buildings are all there.
Like a normal, quiet city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources consistently describe the experience from the ground as feeling profoundly wrong.
Because of the stillness.
That unnatural stillness. Empty flats, silent streets. And the descriptions of nature starting at slow reclamation are particularly powerful. Weeds pushing through pavement cracks, dust settling on signs, wildlife moving back into the parks. It's a city frozen in the exact moment of its abandonment.
Waiting for a life that is barred from ever returning.
And that prohibition is not easing. Years later, parts of the city remain strictly off limits, still guarded, still restricted, and for some residents, the greatest trauma is that they were never allowed back. Not even for a supervised trip to collect personal belongings, family photos, inherited items.
And that detail, the permanent removal of people's access to their own property, all under the guise of a temporary measure, is maybe the most damning evidence that The public explanation just can't be the full truth.
Absolutely. Think about what a city is designed to do. They're designed to absorb and outlive decisions, to survive crashes, political changes, even wars. This one didn't. It was simply switched off.
And the switch remains in the off position. The source material concludes, rather plainly, that the true cause wasn't the public explanation, but reasons that remain locked behind files most people will never see.
This raises three important unresolved questions that are central to this whole historical paradox. First, why close an entire city instead of just, specific problematic sections?
Right, a surgical approach.
Second, and maybe more importantly, why the relentless, decades-long need to keep the data sealed? Why refuse to update the public, especially if the technical issue they cited years ago was resolved? Secrecy sustained for this long requires constant effort.
And third.
And finally, why were people permanently removed, yet the entire physical infrastructure, the roads, the buildings, the utility lines, was maintained and kept intact? It consumes enormous resources without serving any discernible public function.
It's a contradiction that encapsulates the entire mystery. We are left with a truly provocative, factual thought to consider. Somewhere, on an outdated map that still lists population counts and municipal services, a large city officially exists. But by government decree, no one is allowed to live in it anymore. That physical space remains, entirely preserved, for reasons that only the keepers of the sealed record know.